So in our earlier lesson, we saw that whenever we want to send a request from our application to TWS that involves a specific contract. For example, let's say we want to request historical data or live market data for a specific contract, or let's say we want to place an order in a specific contract, then we need to tell TWS which specific contract we are interested in. And we do so by specifying the properties of that contract. So in this lesson, we will learn how to define a contract and then how to specify those properties. So let's go to our Sublime Text editor, and we are going to use this connection.py file as the starting point for our lesson. So let's copy the code from this file and open a new script, paste it over here and save it as define contract.py. Now, the first thing we need to do before we define the contract is to import the contract class from the IB API source code. So let's open the source code for IB API by going to our C drive, then TWS API, then source, Python client, and IB API. So this contract.py file is the file we're interested in. Let's open this in our editor. And if we scroll down below, we will see that this file has this contract class. And this class has a number of properties. Some of these properties we have already seen in our earlier lesson. So for example, symbol, security type, exchange, primary exchange, currency. These are the properties we looked in our earlier lesson. And there are a number of other properties that we might need in case we are defining more complex contracts. Like if we want to specify properties of an option contract, we will need the expiry date, which is the last trade date or contract month. We would need the strike price, which is this property. Then we would need whether it's a call option or a put option. So this is the right. So there are a number of properties listed over here, and depending upon the contract we want to define, we might make use of a combination of different properties. There is one more way in which we can take a look at the properties of this contract class and understand what is the meaning of these properties by going to Interactive Brokers online documentation. So let's open our browser, go to interactivebrokers.github.io/TWS API, and let's open this page, expand classes, expand class list, expand IB API. There is some problem with this. Let's reload the page again. So go to classes, class list, IB API, and then go to contract. So here again, we see the same properties that we just saw. So con ID is the first property, then we have the symbol. So the advantage of looking at the online documentation is that you can also understand what is the meaning of these properties. So con ID is the unique IB contract identifier. Symbol is the underlying asset symbol. Security type is STK for stock, then OPT for option, FUT for future, and so on. And strike is the option's strike price. Right is either put or call, and this property is valid for options contract. And similarly, you can take a look at these properties and see what's the meaning of these properties. So there are two ways to look at the classes, their methods and properties. One way is to go to the source code, and the second way is to open the Interactive Brokers online documentation. Advantage of looking at the IB API online documentation is that you get all the details about the properties, methods, and classes which you might not see in the source code. So let's go to our script define contract and let's import the contract class. So we write from IB API dot contract import contract. And let's come here and add a comment here, define a contract. So the first thing we need to do is instantiate an object of class contract. Let's call this object as C1 and let's instantiate it. So we write contract here. And now that we have instantiated this contract, we can start assigning the properties that we just saw. So in this lesson, we will create a contract for Apple stock. So let's actually go to TWS and take a look at the properties of this Apple stock here. So we click on financial instrument info, then click on description. And here we can see that symbol is AAPL. So let's go back to our editor and write C1 dot symbol equal to AAPL. Next is C1 dot security type. Let's go back to TWS and the security type is STK. So let's specify that. Next property is C1 dot currency. So the currency is USD. Let's specify this as well. Next property is the exchange. So C1 dot exchange equal to, it says here smart. So let's specify smart here. This primary exchange property is not required, but it wouldn't cause any problem even if we specify this. So C1 dot primary exchange can be specified, but it's not required. So we write NASDAQ over here. So this is how we define properties of a stock contract. And let's actually add a comment here, define an Apple stock contract. So quick summary of how we define a contract. First, we import the contract class from IB API source code. Then we instantiate an object of class contract. And then depending upon the type of contract we want to define, we specify different properties of the contract. For simple contracts like stocks, indexes and CFDs, we need to specify only 4 or 5 key properties: symbol, security type, currency, exchange, and primary exchange. For Apple stock, we do not actually need to specify this primary exchange, but for some other stock contracts, we might need to specify this primary exchange property. And then if we want to define other complex contracts like options, we would need to specify last trade date or contract month, strike, and write property as well. So in the future lessons, we will learn how to define other kinds of contracts.